This week we learned about Schinniger's 6 elements that drive change, which are connectedness, vision, value, support, professional development, and embracement. So starting out with connectedness matters, he brought up a valid point about social media. And for example, in my job, I see that social media definitely drives change, and it's one of the most important news outlets and ways that we go and get updates. For example, my students, they decided to do away with their traditional announcements, and they decided to make a Twitter page for grades 9 through 12, and they use their Twitter page to communicate with each other about upcoming events and extracurricular activities, basketball games, football games, you name it. Their Twitter account is their new way of communicating announcements. So that's just one example of how our current generation is using social media to stay in touch. And for the next one, the vision, I think that that's somewhat self-explanatory, but one scripture that came to mind was Proverbs 29:18, and that starts out by saying, where there is no vision, the people will perish. And I think that no matter what aspect of education you are working in and trying to drive change, there must be a clear and plain vision for the people and staff members that you're working with to see. For the next elements of value and support, I think those go hand in hand with the vision, because once your team sees the vision being manifested, I believe that they will all be all hands on deck on board to support the goal and find value in it. Next up, there's professional development, PD, and I think that's a key aspect in driving change because we should all want to keep growing and learning in our fields of education. Whether you are serving on a leadership team or you're directly in the classroom with students every day, the need for PD is essential, and that should be a continuing force to drive change in your field. Lastly, there's embracement as the final element that drives change. I think this can come from staff continuing to inspire and motivate each other. However, change cannot just come from school leaders. I think it really can start from the bottom on up. But when it comes to school leadership, it's important for school leaders to use all of the previous elements discussed for driving change in a positive manner so that staff can be encouraged and embrace the new knowledge. In my school system, data is used every day. We use data as far as Google spreadsheets and reports, and we're always communicating with each other, data from testing, even down to, we just had a whole meeting about tardies and absences and how looking at the data, what students have been absent and tardy the most and how that correlates with their grades. So data is something that I'm very used to using every day on the job. And then with our technology systems at my job, my school system is very tech savvy. It is a fairly new public charter network. And recently, they just rolled out all new MacBook Airs to every single staff member, whether you're a teacher, you're working in the main office. So I'm actually recording on my MacBook Air now. So I've definitely been benefiting from this new program that we have with our MacBooks. And I think that using this particular lesson will be great in our mandatory PD network sessions that we have. We have it once a month, and I think this is something I can definitely bring forward when our school hosts the next session. So I'm definitely glad that I was able to read about these 6 elements.